To enable voice guidance, press the A button now. The Fine Art of Murder. You arrive at the solicitor's office, full of nervous anticipation. All you know is that you've inherited something from your late great-uncle, Xavier. Deep down, you are hoping for property, but instead you are presented with a first edition of The Picture of Dorian Gray and a postcard print of an oil painting. Not just any painting, but one of Xavier's. He was a famous artist, after all. It's a portrait of an angry man, possibly Xavier himself, but as he had been an identical triplet, it could equally have been either of his two brothers, Yardley and Zachary, dead and missing, respectively. Check the postcard. You turn over the postcard to see a lengthy and seemingly random list of numbers. With a breathless excitement, you immediately jump to the conclusion that it is a code. However, it takes considerably longer to actually decipher it. Continue. 1 month later, and after realizing that the book wasn't simply a gift, it's part of the cipher, you decode the numbers. The message L231 L17 is revealed. After many sleepless nights and endless research into what this means, you eventually decide that it is either the location, date, and lot number in an art auction, or it is the direction to a particular painting in the National Art Gallery. Sign up for the auction. After a long drive to L17, you arrive in Merseyside and the quaint seaside suburbia that is St. Michael's Hamlet. The date is the 31st, and this is your first ever auction. To be honest, you're finding it to be a bit nerve-wracking. All the other people are intimidatingly confident and rich. But when you see lot number 2, you know you made the right decision. It's the second part of the Bolt triptych. Continue. At first, you thought it was the same as the one depicted on the postcard, but when you compare the two, you notice certain differences. A snide smile on this one, but a tense, gritted jawline on the other. A red velvet chair in the postcard print, but faded brown upholstery in this auction piece. The bidding is about to start, so you rush to get a seat, but the place is packed out and there are only a few chairs left. One is adjacent to a woman wearing huge sunglasses and texting manically on her phone, and the other is next to an elderly gentleman in a funereal suit who is silently surveying the crowd. Continue. Who do you sit next to? You have encountered a new story moment. Art auction. The woman wearing sunglasses. She gives you an undisguised look of irritation as you sit down, but then returns to her texting. However, when lot number 2 is presented, she puts the phone away and eyes the portrait eagerly. Seeing your interest, she leans towards you, all friendly now, and whispers, "It can't compete with Xavier's art." Yardley's best work was in charcoal. He was never seen without blackened fingers and lips from licking his fingers to smudge it. Genius. You nod encouragingly, despite thinking how disgusting that sounds, then remark, But this is oil, not charcoal. Why did he do that? Continue. To compete with his brother, of course. That's why this piece is so valuable. All the rage and jealousy that is on this canvas, and then she slyly smirks. Not to mention the fact that owning this and the missing third would be beyond anyone's wildest dreams. Continue. But the conversation ends abruptly as the auction starts. The bids come in, and Yardley Bolt's piece in the infamous triptych is eventually sold for a tidy sum of money. The winner is a surprisingly young and scruffy-looking man who seems like he'd be more at home in a tech startup rather than acquiring art, but looks can be deceiving, you suppose. He leaves immediately following his success. You follow him out into the car park. To avoid looking like a deranged stalker, you introduce yourself as being related to the Bolt brothers, and it works. He is more than happy to talk to you. So, what's the family's take on Zachary's disappearance? He asks. Just mental health issues, you say with a shrug. He had a breakdown, I think, but the family brushed it under the carpet. To be honest, it wasn't really spoken of. I think the family was ashamed, back in those days. The winner looks disappointed by your lack of juicy insider tips, but then shows you a Continue. These are printed onto the frame. Do you have any idea what they mean? You study them and adopt a vague expression. Hopefully, he'll think that you're trying to recall something, but really you are memorizing the sequence. Finally, you tell him that you haven't a clue, then go home. Later, you return again to the picture of Dorian Gray and use the numbers to decode another message. You head to the Bolt family home. Standing outside the tall, wrought iron gates, you briefly daydream about the solicitor telling you that this house was your inheritance instead of a book. It is a 6-bedroom Georgian house in 2 acres of land, and since Xavier Bolt is now dead, is presumably unoccupied. You ring the buzzer to make sure, and when there is no reply, enter the 4 digits into the keypad. The gates sweep open, and then you continue. Once in the main hallway, you pause to light the nearby candles rather than attract attention by switching on the lights, then study the family portrait hanging in pride of place. The 3 identical brothers and their sister, Wendy, a pale woman with a barely disguised expression of contempt. But as good as that painting is, you're sure it's not as valuable as the missing third piece of the triptych, and you're convinced that the codes are clues to its whereabouts. Continue. Kitchen. The kitchen is a huge, old-fashioned room, dominated by a long table in the middle and a gigantic stove at the far end. You walk slowly, footsteps sounding loud on the stone floor, but before you reach the large sink, the tap starts to turn. With a painful creak, yellow-brown water trickles out, then becomes a torrent. Continue. It's just an old house. The plumbing is broken, that's all, you mutter to yourself as your fingers make contact with the tap. Suddenly, every drawer in the kitchen clatters opens, then slams shut again. You scream, spin around, and press both hands against your mouth. You are horror-struck and petrified, but the kitchen is empty. And then continue. Standing next to the stove is a woman. She has her back towards you, and now there is an icy grip around your stomach. You really don't want her to turn around. You really don't want to see her face. However, when she does turn, you see that it is the Bolt sister. The woman. Continue. But it's never too late, she replies. Since my death, I have asked myself many questions. How could one brother do that to the other? How could I have helped him get away with it? Who was I protecting? She shrugs and looks mournfully at you. It is time for justice. You will find the evidence in the pond, but it will have sunk to the bottom. Find it, please, and then you will know the truth. Maybe the truth will free me. Free us all. And before your eyes, she dissolves into a fine mist which swirls and disappears. Continue. On still trembling legs, you leave the kitchen and are relieved to find the hallway empty of specters. But this experience hasn't completely put you off the search. Where will you go next? Living room. Although there are 2 large sofas, they are designed for grandeur rather than comfort, and there isn't even a television. You spot some family photographs on the highly polished sideboard, but your prize find comes from rooting around in the drawers. It's a letter from Zachary to Xavier. We all know his talent isn't a patch on yours, but he will insist on trying to compete. The sad truth is that the only way to make any money from his mediocre canvases is if he were to die. The bump in value that pity brings. Continue. You wince in sympathy for the insulted brother, Yardley. Ouch, that had to hurt, although there's no denying the truth behind it. Still. Continue. But more importantly, did they go beyond this speculation? You knew that Yardley died after an illness, cancer, if you remember correctly, but what if there was more to it? You put the letter back where you found it. Your feet run towards the back. Continue. However, in the distance, you spot something that an interloper could hide in. A mausoleum. You try to enter the Stay a yard. You found Continue. 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 Which room would you like to search for? Continue. Library. Continue. Explore the tombs. Head around the side. You hurtle back. Continue. 1 month later, and after realizing that the book wasn't simply a gift, it's part of the cipher, you decode the numbers. The Continue. Continue. Try to enter. Leave the mausoleum. Head around the side of back into the house. Servants' quarter. Continue. 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 You continue. Which room would you like to search for? Continue. Library. Oscar Wilde. Continue. Continue. However, explore the tombs. Enter. Stay amongst these corpses. But the question is, continue. What is the next step? Continue. Artists. Continue. Continue. Kitchen. Continue. Library. Natural. Edgar Allan Poe. You quickly find the section. Continue. Your feet run. Continue. Explore the tombstones in the graveyard. It seems that head around. Continue. Back into the house. You. Servants' quarter. The bedroom. The fireplace. At first, you think Continue. You found. Conclusion. You did your best. Continue. 1 month later, and after. Continue. Try to stay amongst. Continue. Take the shirt collar. You take the blood-stained shirt collar as proof of this discovery. Continue. You head around. Continue. Back into the house. Servant's quarter. The bedroom is small. Continue. Continue. You found the shirt collar. You found nothing in the pond. Oh well, poor Yardley's cause of death is going. Check the post. Sign up. Continue. 1. Continue. Continue. Which room? Continue. Oscar Wilde. Continue. However, in the distance, try to enter the. Stay amongst these corpses. But the question is, Yardley. Despite your best efforts, leveraging yourself against the. Open up Clarissa's. Continue. Take the shirt collar. Continue. Enter the secret passageway. Continue. Which would. Ornamental guard. With a fishing net. This is a. Continue. Back into the house. Artist's studio. Information that Zachary's ghost. Continue. The fireplace. Continue. Conclusion. You solve the murders, tying up every loose end. In the process, you made yourself rich beyond your The fine art of murder. You arrive. Check. Continue. 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 Because it's. View the original. Edgar Allan Poe. Continue. Head around the side. The ornamental garden and. You found